Discover the amazing transformation of a plus-size settler woman who dared to love and cook for the hearts of those who overlooked her. Clara, a 32-year-old waitress, often felt like a ghost among the clattering dishes and sizzling grills of her small-town diner. Day in and day out, she masked her loneliness beneath a cheerful smile, serving deep-fried burgers and milkshakes, where culinary finesse was nothing but a wish. Hers was a world where size dictated worth, and more often than not, she found herself tucked away, unseen, in the bustling chaos of customers and kitchen banter. With every order she took, a dull ache resided just beneath her surface. Memories of her grandmother swirled in the fringes of her mind, wrapping around her heart like a warm tortilla, reminding her of the spices and laughter that once filled their little kitchen. Cooking was more than sustenance. It was an escape that ignited her spirit. But even as she poured her love into the meals served at the diner, the sting of judgment felt like a constant companion. Her size overshadowed her talent, and Clara wrestled with despair as she watched patrons overlook her passion, focused instead on what she was. Then, life threw its curveball. Her grandmother's health took a turn for the worse, and the news drove an ache deeper into Clara's chest. Amidst the panic and anxious conversations with family, she sought solace in an old attic filled with forgotten memories. As she rifled through dusty boxes, she uncovered a treasure trove of cherished family recipes, handwritten notes infused with love, faded photographs of simpler times, and stories waiting to be told. This hidden treasure was a spark she had longed for, igniting a fire of determination that had been buried beneath layers of doubt. In the heart of the diner, the aroma of frying oil was overshadowed now by the scent of nostalgia. Yet the reality of her life loomed large. Clara faced an invisible wall built by a community that often dictated who deserved respect. Each deep-fried order served, she felt the weight of her dreams pushing down harder. With every judgmental stare from customers lingering at the counter, insecurities grew, clawing at her confidence. She was caught in the crossfire of what she aspired to be and what she felt compelled to be. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Word spread that a renowned chef was stopping in their town. For Clara, this was a chance to step out from the shadows, to claim the spotlight. But as exhilaration coursed through her, so did paralyzing self-doubt. The night of the chef's visit ignited an internal war. Stomach in knots, she adorned the diner with elegance, manicured the table, and prepared her grandmother's treasured recipes. A cacophony of fear and hope reverberated inside her. Would they see beyond her size? Would they taste her heart's labor? As she caught the chef's gaze, she noted a flicker of interest mingled with skepticism. A breath caught in her throat. The pressure of that moment mounted, heating the air around her. Just when she began to find her rhythm, hushed whispers sliced through the air, sharp as a chef's knife. Their words dug into her, fraying the fragile web of confidence she had spun. Clara felt like a kitchen timer ticking down too fast. She was near the limit of endurance. The echoes of her grandmother's voice rang true, urging her courage out from hiding. Yet, standing before the stove with all eyes upon her, a choice unfurled like a recipe, a chance to cook with passion or retreat into the quiet corners again. The silence thickened. As she approached the heat, heart racing, uncertain, teetering on the edge of revelation. Clara stood at the stove, caught in the eye of a storm she had never intended to create. The din of the diner faded, leaving only the rhythmic bubbling of boiling water and the sharp hiss of sizzling oil in her ears. This was not just another dinner service. This was her chance to rewrite her narrative, a bold line in a chapter that had often been defined by overshadowed dreams. With trembling hands, she grasped the wooden spoon and began stirring her grandmother's signature sauce. Each motion felt deliberate, steeped in memories of laughter and love, inciting a flicker of passion that hewed close to the surface. Yet the weight of the whispers loomed large. Every judgmental murmur grew louder. Their doubts echoed in her mind, taunting her when her own internal voice faltered. "Stay focused," she reminded herself. Clara inhaled deeply, recalling her grandmother's words. "Cooking is an expression of love. Honey, don't forget who you're cooking for." It wasn't the diners or a famous chef. It was for the little girl who once danced in the kitchen, for the woman who dared to dream beyond the walls of a diner. As she plated the first dish, a tangle of pasta glistening with sauce, she felt a deep-seated resolve harden within her. She arranged it with care, not merely for the chef's critical eye, but as a testament to her journey. Each piece of basil she delicately placed atop the dish felt like an act of rebellion against the narrative of invisibility that had haunted her. This was Clara, not the plus-size waitress, but a proud bearer of her family's culinary heritage. The moment she presented the first plate to the chef, time slowed. He leaned in, scrutinizing her creation, and Clara held her breath as a wave of vulnerability washed over her. Would he taste the years of practice, the tender memories infused alongside the flavors? Would he see her for who she truly was? Clara waited, each heartbeat loud against the silence that enveloped them. The chef took a bite, and for an instant, the world ceased to exist. His expression shifted, curiosity turning into thoughtful contemplation. Clara's pulse raced. It was a quiet moment, but the gravity of it felt monumental. Then, without warning, a fork dropped, clattering against the plate. Clara flinched, her confidence wavering yet again. The chatter of the diners resumed, but now it seemed louder, drowning out her fears. She could feel the eyes on her, and for the first time, she didn't shrink back. Instead, she took a step forward, defiance curling her lips into a soft smile. Clara had to be the voice of her own story. She couldn't let the judgments define her anymore. "Chef," she called, breaking the cacophony of voices, "I can give you a taste of home, but only if you lend me your ear too." It was a simple invitation, yet it held an undercurrent of challenge. The murmurs quieted, and Clara felt a sudden weight to her words, spinning her doubts into ambition. Perhaps, just perhaps, this was the moment that could change everything. Yet, as she stood on the brink of a new beginning, a gnawing question tugged at her. What if the chef didn't understand the depth of love in her food? What if the world beyond this diner remained just as unyielding? Tension thickened as she awaited his response, her heart in her throat. The chef looked up, intrigue sparking in his eyes. Clara felt a shift, a turning point approaching, one that could either shatter her fragile new confidence or lift her higher than she had ever imagined. Would she be able to confront not just a chef's palate, but the core of her own self-worth? The moment of truth was upon her. The chef regarded Clara with a penetrating gaze, a subtle shift in his posture suggesting curiosity tinged with skepticism. In that stark moment, Clara confronted not only the expectations from those around her, but the towering walls she built around her own identity. Clenching the wooden spoon tighter, she willed her heart to steady. She couldn't back down now. "Your food tells a story," the chef finally said, his voice low and measured. "But why should I listen to you?" The question hung in the air like a thick cloud, challenging not just her culinary skills, but her entire existence. It struck Clara hard, the raw truth of it igniting a fire within. Her past had often been peppered with others' doubts, but today was distinctly different. She was more than a waitress. She was a conduit of generations, a weaver of memories through the simple act of cooking. "Because it's more than just food," she replied, her voice rising with newfound fervor. "It's love, history, and culture. It's who I am and where I come from. This sauce is my grandmother's legacy." The chef's brow furrowed, perhaps appreciating the weight of her words, yet she saw his doubt linger. Clara took a deep breath. forcing herself to breathe past the murmur of uncertainty that still swirled within her, demanding more than mere reassurance. Cooking allows me to share my truth, she continued, lowering her voice to an almost conspiratorial whisper, and today, I want you to taste that truth. Now, the silence was heavy with expectations, a palpable energy coalescing around her words and the plates that bore her creations. Could she articulate the importance of what lay before them? Would they glean meaning from the layers of flavor, or recognize the resilience simmering just beneath the surface? Her heartbeat became a steady drum as she began to recount elements of her culinary journey. She spoke about the long hours spent in her grandmother's kitchen, the lessons learned while stirring sauces and kneading dough, the importance of ingredients sourced from local farmers. Above all, she wove personal anecdotes that deepened the connection to her food, stories that revealed who she was beneath the surface. Each dish is a tribute, she said, her tone unwavering, to my family, to my community, and ultimately, to myself. I'm not just another cook. I am a storyteller with every plate I serve. Seizing the moment, she darted around the counter to grab another dish, the vibrant colors contrasting sharply against the muted decor of the diner. Here, try this, she exclaimed, presenting a colorful ratatouille, bursting with sun-drenched vegetables, each cut meticulously crafted. This is my way of honoring the land we live on and the hands that toil in it. The chef's face softened, the skepticism giving way to a glimmer of recognition. Still, Clara felt the weight of others' gazes, her co-workers, the diners all witnesses to her vulnerability, and that sparked a fresh wave of determination. What will you do for your voice? She asked herself internally. She grabbed the edge of the counter to steady herself. Will you share it, or let it slip away? As tension ebbed and flowed around her, a sense of clarity pierced through the doubt. Clara was more than just a woman in a diner. She was a force fueled by an unquenchable desire to be seen and heard. Engaging the chef now wasn't merely about impressing him, but reclaiming her narrative. But just as the chef opened his mouth, preparing what could have been a life-altering affirmation, the door swung open, drawing attention away from Clara. In walked a well-known food critic, his presence disruptive and anxiety-inducing, like a dark cloud looming over her newfound confidence. Clara felt her pulse quicken once more. The stakes had escalated, and her moment was swiftly eclipsing into a critical turning point that could solidify her path forward or obliterate it entirely. Would she rise to the occasion, or would this uninvited challenge unravel her hard-fought momentum? The air crackled with new tension, an impending storm of judgment and recognition, clashing at once. The moment had come now to face her fears, and it was time to decide how she would redefine herself in this chaotic whirlpool of culinary ambition and deeply personal struggles. Clara's breath caught in her throat as the food critic strode toward her, the unmistakable aura of authority clinging to him like perfume. Every eye in the room shifted toward this newcomer, curiosity almost palpable, turning her carefully constructed moment into an open stage for scrutiny. The chef's gaze flickered between her and the critic, the original discussion hanging in the balance, as if the world tilted on the cusp of an irrevocable change. With each step the critic took, Clara wrestled with her insecurities, recalling every moment of self-doubt that had accompanied her culinary journey. A million questions swirled in her mind. Was her food worthy? Would he see the heart behind her dishes? The passionate memory of her grandmother, the essence of her culture, or would he reduce it all to mere ratings and reviews? The thought felt like a vice tightening around her chest. Nice to meet you. The critic boomed, his voice smooth yet commanding. I'm excited to see what the hype is about. He flashed a smile, and for an instant, it seemed genuine, yet Clara's unease nagged. All eyes remained trained on her. The moment now required performance. Thank you, she stammered, surprised by her own apprehension. I hope you enjoy what I've prepared. As she guided him toward the plate of ratatouille, a dish rich with memories and painstaking effort, Clara felt the weight of her history bearing down on her. What if he dismissed it outright, reducing her grandmother's legacy to another dish in a sea of mediocrity. The notion churned in her stomach, but she pressed on, recalling the vibrancy of her ingredients and the essence of her heritage. It was time to reclaim her power. "This dish embodies my roots," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "It's an homage to my heritage, showcasing seasonal ingredients harvested at their peak." Her voice steadied as she spoke, igniting the passion she felt for every slice and stir. The critic lifted his fork, inspecting the colors orange, green, and purple mingling together harmoniously. As he took a bite, Clara's heart raced. Would he feel the soul behind it? The moment stretched longer than she expected, uncertainty knotting her stomach tighter. Then, the critic closed his eyes, letting the burst of flavor envelop him. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, and to Clara's surprise, a nod of approval followed. "Interesting texture," he remarked, his tone thoughtful. "You've managed to balance complexity and simplicity quite well." Clara felt something shift within her. Here was validation alive, robust, and undeniable. The invisible chains that had often shackled her began to fray. Yet, even amidst this budding validation, a voice inside her urged caution. The critic's appreciation didn't erase her previous struggles. How often had she overanalyzed her cooking, feeling incapable due to her own insecurities? She could not allow validation from others to define her worth. The conversation unfolded, layering further into her thoughts. The critic unwrapped her dish, dissecting her technique while revealing insights about flavors and presentation. Clara listened intently, taking notes, driven not by desperation, but by a genuine desire to grow. When the discussion reached its hungry crescendo, the chef interjected. "Clara, are you ready to step into the world beyond this diner? Your story deserves a larger platform." The challenge echoed in her mind like a summons. Was she prepared to leap beyond the walls she'd built, into a landscape of contentious opinions? The thought terrified her, while simultaneously igniting a flicker of excitement. Clara's eyes landed on the critic once more, wondering if he sensed the budding sophistication of her identity forming within her. As she looked around the room, the diners watching, the chef approving, and the critic weighing his thoughts, Clara felt a swell of determination. Now was not the time to retreat. It was her moment to harness her fears and ambitions into a powerful narrative. "Don't underestimate the power of your own voice," she reminded herself, breathing deeply. This is just the beginning. But the moment also brought another question spiraling into her psyche. Would she dare to step into the light and claim her place, knowing the judgment and scrutiny that would likely follow? Emboldened, yet apprehensive, Clara stood at the precipice of her transformation, gazing into the unknown. The morsels of encouragement from the chef and the critic hung tantalizingly. What awaited her on the other side of this defining moment? As she squared her shoulders, ready to engage with the challenge head-on, a realization washed over her like a cleansing tide. The true test lay ahead not just of her culinary skills, but of her willingness to share her authentic self with the world. The critic leaned in, a glint of curiosity in his eyes. "What is next for you, Clara?" With that question lingering in the air, Clara felt an exhilarating mixture of fear and determination. The moment of truth was approaching, and her answer could change everything. What would she say? Clara swallowed hard, the weight of the critic's question pressing down on her like a heavy fog. She could feel the world constricting around her, time clawing at the edges of the moment, demanding a response. Would she play it safe, or would she peel away the layers of her doubts and expose her true aspirations? "Actually, I've been considering," she began, searching for the words that could encapsulate all that had begun to stir within her. "I want to explore more about my culinary roots. I want to share not just the dishes, but the stories behind them, all the love, loss, and history that goes into the food." The critic's brow furrowed slightly, and for a moment, Clara feared she had overstepped. But then, he leaned in closer, as if the wisdom of her intention demanded a deeper listen. "That is a bold vision, Clara. Are you ready for the artistry and vulnerability it requires. In that instant, Clara confronted herself. The thought struck close to home, igniting shivers that cascaded down her spine. Vulnerability was a treacherous path. It left her exposed to both critics and adoration. But there was something exhilarating about it too, a calling, perhaps. Yes, she said firmly, surprising even herself. The sound of conviction resonated, no longer laced with uncertainty. I believe food should evoke emotion, should tell a story. I've spent too long hiding behind my fears. And as those words spilled forth, Clara felt the frayed edges of self-doubt slowly strengthen, reinforcing her resolve. The critic nodded appreciatively, but she sensed his skepticism. You realize that the culinary world can be brutal. Critics, patrons, even your own chef can be unforgiving. Are you willing to navigate that? Even now, Clara recognized the battle ahead. The culinary landscape wasn't simply about creativity. It was rife with judgment. There was the potential for failure, disappointment, and harsh lessons. But wasn't that the very crucible that shaped greatness? I'm ready to face whatever comes, she asserted, her voice unwavering, even as a flicker of fear intertwined with the excitement in her chest. The critic's lips parted slightly, comprehension dawning in his eyes. Clara's declaration had transcended words. It was a lesson learned beneath starlit kitchens and sizzling pans. In her mind, she pictured the bustling restaurant world beyond the diner's comfort, swirling with new flavors and influences, each a piece of herself yet to be explored. The chef, sensing the energy shifting, stepped forward. Clara, your passion is palpable, but passion alone won't get you far. You'll need a plan. The advice served as a stark reminder to Clara that transformation was more than the spark of ambition. What do you suggest? She asked, eager to garner insights that could guide her journey. It starts with defining your brand, he replied. Every dish you create should reflect that vision. Document your process, the failures, the successes you need to curate your narrative. Then, you can use social platforms to share that story. Clara's mind raced. The infinite possibilities echoed in her thoughts like a roaring tide. Could she transform her kitchen into her creative arena? Could each meal represent not just her culture, but also her evolution as a chef and a storyteller? Can you help me? She asked, something fragile and hopeful in her tone. Of course, the chef replied, a smile forming on his face, recognizing her momentum. But remember, it's your journey. You have to embrace every twist, every turn, and stand firm against scrutiny. That night, as Clara locked up the diner, her heart danced with anticipation and dread. She pictured dishes evolving beyond flavors into layers of meaning, her grandmother's love, her struggles, her victories all unfolding on the plates she would serve. Yet, a whisper of uncertainty remained. Would the world embrace her story? Would they appreciate the depth she aimed to reveal? A deep breath steadied her spine, and she promised herself not to let fear dictate her next steps. The night deepened, each star a reminder that she had choices. Suddenly, a wild idea gripped her. What if she could host a tasting night? An intimate gathering where she could unveil her narrative through food, inviting opinions and feedback, but more importantly, inviting connection. As she settled into bed, Clara knew the journey had just begun, and the next step was as clear as the moonlight streaming through her window. But she also sensed the challenge ahead: how to curate an experience that resonated with authenticity while maintaining her footing amid potential criticism and doubt. With that thought clinging to her, the quiet ambience of the night held an electric promise, a reminder that she was on a path toward transformation. But even as possibilities thrilled her, she would need to confront her ultimate test of courage. What would happen when her story met the discerning eyes of the public? Would her voice ring true, or would the harsh critiques bring her back to a silence she wished to escape? The next morning, Clara awoke with a sense of purpose that propelled her from bed faster than a shot of espresso. The plan to host a tasting night crystallized in her mind, each detail enhancing her excitement. The thought sent shivers through her. This was more than just an event. It was her chance to weave a narrative through her culinary artistry. As she dressed, she glanced in the mirror. The reflection staring back wore determination alongside traces of trepidation. Would this new venture expose her vulnerabilities to the world? For so long, she had crafted her identity around others' expectations. But now it was her turn to take control of her story. That be why mid-morning, Clara was deep in research mode, outlining everything from the types of dishes she wanted to serve to the atmosphere she envisioned. She scribbled notes on the imperfections she could embrace, savoring the missed opportunities in her past, but knowing they could birth richer flavors in her dishes. Each forkful could be a memory, every bite a revelation, all layered with her personal journeys influenced by her grandmother's recipes and her own experiences. She needed a space that felt intimate, a place where she could connect directly with her audience. The diner had always felt like a safe haven, but it couldn't transform into the space she needed for her vision. A local community kitchen, often rented by aspiring chefs, popped in her mind. It had the right vibe. Clara picked up her phone, her heart pounding as she confirmed the kitchen's availability for the date she had in mind. After securing the space, she turned her attention to the menu, each dish representing pieces of her life: her grandmother's signature bean stew that whispered of home, a spicy shrimp dish that recalled her travels, and a dessert infused with vibrant passion that echoed her quest for love and fulfillment. Clara realized these meals were not mere sustenance. They were the fabric of her narrative. As she developed her recipes, she turned her sights to the marketing aspect, the critical piece to attract the right crowd. Using her phone, she began documenting her journey, sharing snippets of her thoughts and designs on social platforms. Clara poured her emotions into her posts, highlighting not just the food itself, but the significance behind each ingredient chosen. She felt exhilaration swelling with each comment, and like a burgeoning community forming around her vision. But beneath that excitement lay a steady drum of doubt. Were her flavors bold enough? Would her stories resonate? What if the feedback was colder than the ice cream she intended to serve? As she stirred together ingredients, she also stirred up her fears. Those thoughts loomed like dark clouds, threatening to rain on her culinary parade. With each passing day, as the tasting night approached, Clara wrestled with her self-doubt. Allies emerged when she communicated with fellow culinary artists, their encouragement lifting her spirits. They shared stories of their own nerves before major events and reminded her that vulnerability was also a source of strength. Then came the day before the tasting, and energy pulsed in the air, a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. She stood in the kitchen, surrounded by fresh produce, herbs, and spices, each one signaling a chapter of her story. The aroma of her stew simmered, and she felt herself entering the rhythm of creation, her feet grounding her in the essence of who she was. As Clara arranged the tables, her heart thudded with hope and dread. Outside the kitchen, laughter and conversation teased her ears, pulling her towards the unknown. She knew the time had come to face the public, a space filled with familiar faces and new critics alike. Would they taste the truth within her dishes, savoring not just the flavors but the stories that accompanied them? Or would they mirror the judgments that harbored in her mind? Suddenly, the kitchen doors swung open, and she caught sight of the first guests filing in. Clara's breath hitched, an avalanche of emotions crashing around her. The moment had arrived to reveal her story. What she didn't know was how deeply it would resonate with each person in that room. Would they embrace her culinary journey or dismiss it with indifference? The stakes felt greater than ever as she prepared to serve not just food, but herself. As the first dish was presented, Clara's pulse quickened. This was her voice, her legacy, her authenticity in a world that demanded perfection. Would she emerge strengthened or shattered from this vulnerable unveiling? Clara's heart thrummed in her chest as she embraced the first plunge into her culinary narrative. As guests gathered around the warmly lit tables, their anxious laughter filling the air, she felt an electric charge, a mix of fear and exhilaration. Each person who took their seat was more than a spectator. They were witnesses to her transformation. The first dish she served was a petite portion of her grandmother's bean stew, presented with a delicate sprig of cilantro. As she watched the guests taste it, she held her breath, the silence of their initial reactions humming in her ears. Would they recognize the love infused in each bite? Would they feel the warmth of home or simply taste beans? Their faces told her the story before words formed. One woman's eyes sparkled with nostalgia. Another man closed his eyes in reverence, savoring the layers. Clara clung to those fleeting moments of affirmation, a balm against her swirling doubts. "Delicious," murmured a guest across the table, igniting Clara's desire to share more than just food, but a symphony of memories. Each dish served became a gateway, inviting them deeper into her journey. The vibrant shrimp dish next, dancing with spices and garnished with a hint of lime. She watched as they leaned in, curious. Their forks trembled in anticipation, a silent agreement that this wasn't merely about sustenance, but doubts lingered in the shadows. What if this wasn't tea enough? What if the storytelling faltered as her hands did? As she moved from table to table, engaging in conversation, she could feel her pulse quicken with each compliment, while curiosity waged a war against insecurity. Moments of connection unfolded as stories were shared. A woman spoke of her own grandmother's tradition, her kitchen filled with memories. Clara realized this wasn't solely her narrative anymore. It became a mosaic of experiences, each guest contributing threads woven through time, culture, and shared passion for food. This was community growing organically, an emergence of collective resonance. Yet, in the midst of this blossoming, the nagging voice of doubt flared again. What if her food was misinterpreted? She had constructed the flavors as vessels of her identity. Would they see her vulnerability through them or reject it? Memories of self-doubt poured in, dark clouds overhead threatening to shroud her hard-earned light. Then it happened. A couple in the back corner, animatedly discussing her dessert, brought her back to the present. With a knowing smile, they praised its audacity, indulging in the rich, passionate flavors that mirrored her quest for love and fulfillment. It struck Clara it wasn't tea, just food. It was her food. In that moment, she felt a shift within herself. Her journey had never aimed at assuring approval, but instead finding authenticity in the flavor she represented, even amid uncertainty. Clara stepped out from the kitchen, invigorated. Each dish was not merely a meal. They were mirrors reflecting her trials and triumphs. As the night progressed, she became enveloped in a rhythm, a dance with her guests, her heart aligning with their excitement and curiosity. By the time she considered the final course, a new wave of feedback flooded in, transforming hesitant uncertainty into a blossoming confidence. She realized she was no longer cooking to prove herself. She was sharing stories of resilience, love, and identity. Yes, she prepared the last dessert, one that symbolized her quest for joy. She felt the weight of her evolution. It wasn't about crafting the perfect dish. It was sharing the essence of who she was. Walking back to the dining area, she felt energized, her doubts wavering against the tide of her newfound resolve. And then, as she served the final dessert, a man rose from his seat, drawing attention towards him. "This is amazing, but I need to know what inspired you to create such flavors?" His question hung in the air, bringing with it a sense of scrutiny that took Clara by surprise. Feelings of vulnerability resurfaced like shadows, and the need to articulate her journey became urgent. "Let me tell you about an experience that changed everything," Clara began, heart racing again, aware that this moment could determine how she saw herself moving forward. What she would reveal next could redefine her culinary identity even further. The world, even when she didn't love herself. Clara's voice held an assertive tone, the words igniting a spark of determination within her. The room quieted, all eyes focused on her as she clutched the dessert plate like a lifeline. She inhaled deeply, the familiar aroma of her creation mingling with the weight of expectations. This was no longer about merely tasting. It was about unveiling a part of herself that had long been shrouded in doubt. I grew up in a kitchen filled with secrets," she began, gratifying the silence with a soft cadence. "My grandmother showed love through her culinary skills. Each meal whispered stories woven over time, my family's heritage, struggles, victories, and vulnerabilities. I learned that food could unlock doors to what we felt but rarely spoke of." The room began to transform. The guests weren't just diners now. They were fellow travelers delving into the depths of her reflection. The tension eased, and Clara allowed herself to lean into the moment, feeling the newfound confidence swell within her. She recalled the initial hesitations, the feeling of being judged, not just by her guests, but by herself. She was not merely presenting dishes. She was sharing an intimate portrait painted with flavors and emotions. After losing my grandmother, I felt lost. I questioned my ability to carry on her legacy. I thought, who am I to share such rich history when I'm still figuring out my place in it? Clara's voice slightly cracked, her vulnerability hanging in the air like the aroma from her kitchen. With gathered breaths, she forged on. But one day, standing before the stove, I realized that my journey was part of that narrative too. Every flavor in the pot echoed, not just what I inherited, but who I became through it, the resilience, the love. Each dish I created became a testament to my own growth. As she concluded, Clara looked around the room, noticing the glistening eyes of her guests, their expressions revealing a shared understanding. It was as though she had given them keys to their stories, reflections of love, loss, and acceptance simmering just beneath the surface of their own experiences. Yet, beneath this current of warmth surged an undercurrent of anxiety. How would this revelation affect her future? Would her culinary identity be further transformed, or would it fracture under the old worries? On the brink of a revelation about her true purpose, Clara grappled with the unsettling reality that deeper connections came with their own complexities. The man who initially posed the question leaned forward, intrigued. "So, has sharing your story changed how you view your cooking?" Clara's pulse quickened. This was the crossroads she feared. Would she merely share or dive into this inner conflict? The truth of her artistic expression began to navigate the waves of her fluctuating self-esteem. She could feel the crossroads shifting, the path diverging into familiar fear and courageous vulnerability. "Absolutely," she replied, her conviction rising. "I've realized it's not just about feeding bellies. It's about nourishing souls." As she regained composure, her thoughts crystallized. The admiration from her audience fueled a new ambition. Perhaps this was her calling, not only to nourish with food, but to nurture through her journey. Her mind raced ahead, mapping out a vision for her next steps. But the thought brushed through her mind like a passing shadow. What if the connection she forged today faded away tomorrow? The pressure to maintain this authenticity weighed heavily, leaving her grappling with fear versus faith. The questions lingered, embedding themselves deep within her psyche. "Clara, what is next for you?" Another guest chimed in, widening her eyes with curiosity. The inquiry echoed through her mind, a clarion call for decision. How would you push boundaries within this newfound perspective? The room leaned in, the anticipation a palpable force. Clara hesitated, her heart drumming again, bursting with the potential that lay ahead, knowing the next chapter of her story would either cement her growth or reveal new challenges that required recalibration. "I'm ready to find out," she declared, steeling herself to venture beyond the familiar borders of her kitchen, ready to explore what it truly means to be a culinary storyteller. But as she surveyed the expectant faces around her, she felt the rush of endorphins compete with the clenching fear in her stomach. What new heights could she reach? And would she have the courage to confront the uncharted territories of her identity once again? Clara stepped away from that gathering, her heart still racing with the mingled thrill of achievement and raw vulnerability. The guests had gone, but their questions lingered, echoing through the quiet of her empty kitchen. Alone now, she was faced with the shadows of self-doubt once more, like old friends reluctant to part. What would it mean to truly embrace this role as a culinary storyteller? The notion beckoned gently yet intensely, promising fulfillment but demanding a bravery she wasn't sure she possessed. She thought of her grandmother, who had faced her own crossroads, overcoming adversities with grace and resilience. Clara longed to emulate that strength, but could she withstand the scrutiny of her own world, let alone the wider one that awaited her? As night draped itself over the city, Clara found herself staring out of the window, the world below glittering with lights. Beneath the layers of uncertainty, she felt a quiet stirring, an urge to make a mark. Her mind shifted from fear to a more potent inquiry. What did she want to communicate through her cooking? What stories lay dormant, waiting for the right moment to be plated and served? The next morning, she awoke with a searing motivation. It washed over her as she walked into her kitchen, this sacred space where she had always felt the most alive. She gazed at the collection of ingredients waiting patiently in the pantry, anticipating their transformative potential. Clara began experimenting, creating dishes that spoke not only of her heritage but also her journey. However, this exploration was not just culinary. It was deeply personal. She infused her recipes with stories from her past, the awkward family gatherings, the years of insecurity, and the profound realization of empowerment that came with embracing who she was becoming. Each successful dish ignited her passion, and new connections began to form. Social media became a canvas. Her platforms gradually became more than just snapshots of her food. They turned into chronicles of her evolution. She shared her triumphs, but did not shy away from revealing her setbacks. The honesty of her journey attracted others, sparking conversations about self-love, acceptance, and the cultural significance of food. Yet with each like and engaging comment, the weight of expectation pressed down harder. Would she be able to sustain this newfound authenticity, or was it just a passing phase? Clara wrestled with the idea that her culinary path must also lead to public scrutiny, the fear of judgment creeping back. The vulnerability that had fostered connections now seemed woven with the potential for harsh criticism. Clara, your story is inspiring. A follower commented on her recent post. I've never seen anyone combine personal struggles with food in such a beautiful way. While her heart swelled with the recognition, guilt nibbled at the edges of her consciousness. What if her authenticity did not resonate with everyone? Determined to confront this burgeoning sense of obligation, she devised a plan for her next steps. Clara decided to host a series of intimate dining experiences, a fusion of storytelling and meal sharing that invited guests into her narrative. This would not just be about food. It was about connection, vulnerability, and bridging the gap between self-doubt and the love for her art. Yet there was still a gnawing question she had yet to confront. How would she handle dissent? What if, amid the praise, critique emerged that threatened to undermine everything she had built? That thought sent a shiver down her spine, stirring doubts in the pit of her stomach. Taking a deep breath, Clara realized she would have to prepare for the emotional roller coaster ahead. She began crafting her menu, carefully selecting dishes that highlighted not just her culinary skills, but her journey, a legacy of resilience simmering beneath colorful spices. As she made her preparations, she felt the air thicken with anticipation. Would she rise to the occasion, embracing the potential chaos? Or would the unease drown her newfound confidence, pulling her back into the clutches of fear? The moment for her first dining experience approached, and with it came an impending confrontation. Clara closed her eyes, mentally orchestrating her evening, reminding herself, "This is my story, and it is worth telling." Yet, in the back of her mind loomed an unsettling thought. What if this was more than just sharing her story? What if this was her moment of reckoning, a real test of her resolve? With a single candle flickering on the counter, she thought, "I'm one step closer." But as determination mixed with trepidation, an undeniable truth resonated. She would either soar in her authenticity or confront the striking vulnerabilities she had yet to explore. In the aftermath of the tasting night, Clara found herself reborn. The emotional connections forged through her culinary storytelling had cast off the heavy cloak of invisibility that once cloaked her. Each compliment, paired with the exchanges of personal anecdotes from her guests, solidified her belief that vulnerability was strength, not a crack in her armor, but a bridge extending to others. Months later, in a bright, newly decorated cafe named Clara's Table, Clara stood before an audience of eager patrons. The walls were adorned with photographs from her culinary journey, pictures of joyous kitchen moments, vibrant ingredients, and heartfelt creations. This was more than a cafe. It was a sanctuary for the stories of generations, an open door where guests welcomed memories cooked with love. The cafe became a platform where Clara shared monthly themed dinners, each one revolving around a specific culinary narrative. Last month, she explored harvest memories, a menu steeped in autumn-esque bounty, her grandmother's slow-cooked pumpkin soup, and a tart spiced apple pie that elicited gasps of nostalgic joy. Each dish was accompanied by stories told with unfiltered honesty, revealing the transformative power of food and memory. The growth was tangible, and Clara reveled in it. Lost in thought during the preparations for her next dinner, she recalled every hurdle she'd overcome, from her insecurities in the diner to the profound respect she now commanded for the authentic flavors reflecting her essence. Clara realized she had achieved more than simply creating delicious meals. She had built a fortress of confidence through her culinary artistry, proving to herself and others that size was irrelevant in defining worth. She plated the vibrant sushi of her upcoming event, Waves of Heritage. A supporting voice echoed from behind. Her mentor, the renowned chef who had once challenged her, stepped forward with admiration shining in his eyes. "You've transformed beautifully, Clara. You not only cook with your heart, now you've embraced the true essence of what it means to share that love with others." The praise was a feather in her cap, solidifying her evolution from the ghostly waitress to the vibrant chef who led with her story. The night of the themed dinner arrived, and Clara felt electric as guests filled the quaint cafe. As she welcomed them at the door, their energy mingled with the aroma of freshly prepared dishes wafting through the air. They came not only for the food, but for the experience and invitation to join Clara's culinary journey. Throughout the evening, Clara moved from table to table, a radiant presence, recounting stories that stitched the fabric of her dishes together. Each guest savored the passion, experiencing not just the flavors, but the depth of connection she nurtured through her meals. When a brave attendee asked, "How did you find the courage to share your story so openly?" Clara paused, reflecting on her transformation. "When I realized that sharing my truth could create connections, I understood my purpose wasn't only to cook, but to tell the stories behind each dish. Cooking unearths my roots while allowing others to explore theirs too." The sense of acceptance blossomed beautifully, encapsulating the atmosphere with warmth. Clara found solace, no longer battling the ghosts of self-doubt. She had achieved a profound personal and professional metamorphosis, securing her place in the culinary world and in her own heart. As the night wrapped up, the applause echoed through the cafe. Guests left not only with satisfied palates, but with a sense of belonging to something larger. Clara's journey was documented through a social media platform that dazzled with stories, recipes, and the faces of those inspired to embrace their identities alongside her. That night, standing among a room filled with echoes of laughter, Clara felt the undeniable truth settle within her. She acclaimed her narrative. Her experience had shifted from a lone battle against insecurity into an inspiring saga where others could find empowerment, a shared identity boldly cooked on plates. Clara's triumph was not an end, but just the beginning. With each dinner, she would continue to paint her journey, discovering what lay ahead as she evolved as a chef and as a storyteller. Her story etched deep into the hearts of many. Clara had emerged victorious, not just economically, nor culturally, but profoundly, personally. Join Clara and others on this journey of transformation, resilience, and delicious stories. You need to subscribe now to witness these exclusive emotional stories, and share the inspiration. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support Clara's incredible journey. Don't wait even one more second. Comment your reactions and theories about her journey, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel this energy. Let us uplift each other and continue this amazing story of growth together.